All right, welcome everyone back to another episode of CRNA School Prep Academy podcast. I'm your host, Jenny Fennell, CRNA, and today we have another guest episode for you guys, and he's back again. This is my friend and an expert contributor of CRNA School Prep Academy, Richard Wilson. Welcome back, Richard.
Thank you, Jenny. It's been such a pleasure just being a part of CRNA School Prep Academy, and I'm looking forward to today's episode.
Yes, me too. And for those of you guys who are not familiar with Richard, Richard actually has 11 years of faculty experience in the anesthesia program. So he brings like so much tremendous value to CRNA School Prep Academy. He does transcript reviews, one-on-one consultations, essay edits, resume edits for our students. He also does monthly guided Q&A sessions. I mean, just so much. And he's producing content for the Academy. So it's just, thank you so much for all you do. And for those of you guys who are not familiar with CRNA School Prep Academy, you're going to have the link in the show notes below to check out and read more. But so for today's episode, it's kind of a unique topic because it's something that I think that people don't even think of really until they're actually in it. And people don't really talk about this. And so we're going to actually discuss kind of how applicants should go about reaching out to their programs. Because I know we kind of stress that a lot, like you need to be asking your programs, you need to be going to these open houses, you need to be communicating with them to really kind of, and I always say kind of hear it from the horse's mouth, but it's because if you really want to get tailored advice, you need to make sure it's tailored to your program. And so we're going to discuss some key points with that. Is there anything you want to add to that, Richard, as far as?
No, I think you have just really hit the nail on the head there. It's not something that a lot of people do talk about, but it's something that can be very important to the whole process of getting accepted into anesthesia school sooner than later. And so I think this is key with some of the topics we're going to discuss today, and just really going to set them off in the right direction so that, again, you know, the quicker you can get to anesthesia school, the quicker you reach your dream. So let's go and let's get them off.
Yeah, awesome. All right. So to kick it off, you know, a lot of applicants kind of wonder when's the best time to reach out to the programs and introduce themselves. And I guess what would you recommend timing wise? Should it be earlier on in their career path or should it be maybe during their application process?
So I really recommend reaching out during both processes when you look at it. I think there is a really a benefit to an introduction and doing the right introduction to yourself. And I also think that as you're introducing yourself, and we'll get into more details as we go through this podcast, is finding out what the programs are about, what they like, what they're looking for. And I think there's a lot that can set yourself up for success by doing this early in your career path. And when I say early, I'm referring to maybe even towards the end of your nursing degree. Even that soon, reaching out to program directors and program faculty members just to say, hey, here's who I am. Here's what I really want to do. And I want to make sure that I am on the right path as we move forward so that you don't delay admission possibly into a program, so that you're really getting on the right steps per se. Whether it's taking the GRE, whether it's academic courses, whether it is clinical experience and shadowing, all of that can start as early as middle or late nursing school versus waiting till after you graduate. Say that you didn't think about this in nursing school and it's something that you thought about after nursing school, then I say as quickly as possible, reach out. Introduce yourself, get to know more about them. Let them get to know a little bit about you. You don't want to share too much, and we'll talk about that. But let them get to know a little bit about you. And then definitely during the application process. I think that's a key fact is reaching out, because that's when your name's going to pop up. That's when they're going to be looking at files. Now, that's when they're going to be looking at your personal statements and so forth. And so I think it can be beneficial. Now, I'm not saying blow every program director and faculty members' emails up all the time over everything, but I think there is some benefits in some of that, of reaching out when you've got some good information to share. And we're going to talk about good information to share versus bad, or just being a nuisance per se, if you know what I mean, of just blowing emails up. But I think there's really definitely benefits when you look at reaching out or contacting programs early in the process, and also a little bit later.
Yeah, I agree. And I think a lot of this makes a lot of students, I think, nervous because of, like you said, they don't want to cross some boundaries that maybe like they don't want to seem annoying, or maybe they may, I know like for me, a fear would probably be, well, what if I ask them something that's clearly on their website and somehow I missed it? And then they get annoyed that I asked them something that I should already know. And so you really have to do your due diligence and really skim through their website already. But I also think this is a good opportunity for stuff like open houses, because that's also a good way to get some face time and get some of these questions answered without blowing up someone's inbox all the time.
Yeah, that's exactly a great point. Is open houses, and open houses are not always advertised
Mhm.
very well. So if you're reaching out to some of the faculty members and asking, or some of the programs and asking about open houses or information sessions, if they're not having one, then sometimes they'll open up and say, "Hey, we're not having one, but I tell you what, send me some questions you've got, or call me. Let's set something up." So even that short introduction there of asking generic questions can set you up for more conversation moving forward, or may give the program an idea to start open houses or information sessions to share the information. So there's so much really to gain by both, again, introducing yourself early, reintroducing yourself during the application process, and that can really set. I think that really sets people up for success in the long run.
I agree. And again, not being afraid to attend those open houses even early on, like in nursing school. They're not going to turn you away. So,
Now, I've seen people actually come to those as early as their senior year in high school,
mm,
because they were interested, because they knew they really wanted to do this, and so they attended it to see what they could find out while they attended nursing school to be successful.
that's awesome.
So I don't think you can ever start this process too early, to be honest with you.
Mhm.
And then again, you talk about, and we can touch on this, is talk about reaching out to them early, and talk about reaching them a little bit later. It's also showing that you have a persistence, that this is something that you really want to do. This is not a fly by night thing. This is not a I all of a sudden decide I don't want to do nursing, so now I'm going to do nurse anesthesia. I think it
Mhm.
really shows persistence, and the programs may say, "Oh, I remember Jenny talking to me 2 years ago. I remember who she is now, and she's still reaching out to me. Look, she's really been on the path the whole time, and I've seen her persistence in her willpower to get to this point."
Mhm. Yeah, that's a great point. I guess so. When speaking of all this, then when the applicant is reaching out to programs, who should they actually be looking to contact?
Now, that's a great question, and that question is kind of loaded to a certain degree, because most everybody says, "I want to reach to the highest level," right? "I want to reach the program director. I want to make sure they know my name." And that's great. There's nothing completely wrong with that. However, the program director may have their hands in so many hats and so many pots, they may not be able to get back to you quickly. They may not be able to get back to you at all, because that may not be their responsibility. When you look at faculty members and programs, sometimes programs have really kind of boxes that they work in, and specific ones may be responsible for contacts and for reaching back out to applicants or potential applicants. So I say that the first thing you should do, really, I think, is really look at the way that the program is set up. Because sometimes, like I said, the program director is not the first contact, or they may not be a contact at all. And there's so many people that overlook the other faculty members. They overlook the assistant directors and just the general faculty members, the associate professors and so forth. And they're usually a part of the admissions council and admissions committee. And therefore, they will also have an input and have good knowledge base about what the goals are, or what the requirements and criteria are for getting into school. So I really say that you want to look at the website. One thing to do is look at that website, and we're going to mention that about 15 times, I bet, during this commercial, or excuse me, during this podcast. But look at the website. The website usually has contact information associated with it. It may have the program director or assistant program director or faculty members' names. It may have, "Hey, if you've got questions, email this email address." And it's a general email address,
Mhm.
right? So basically, what they're saying is, if you've got questions, don't bother the faculty right now. Let's go to the general one first. And then whoever filters that general one will send it to the appropriate person, because it may be a question about clinical experience. And let's just say, for example, we've got 7 faculty members, and my responsibility is answering questions on transcripts and academics, not on clinical experience. And you've emailed me because you saw my name on the website. Well, that's not my responsibility. You didn't know that, of course. But that's why they sometimes go to that general email address, is so that whoever is managing that and monitoring it can then forward it out to the appropriate person that it really should go to, so that you get the best answer
Mhm.
that you can. So I always say go to the general one first. Now, the problem with the general one sometimes is you don't know, of course, who is seeing that and who is reviewing it. It may be an admin assistant for the program. It may be one of the faculty members for the program. It may be a general person for the university who's not really with the program themselves. So yes, I understand why some people want to reach out to a faculty member because they know it goes straight there. But I always recommend um, sending it to the general email address first. And then you never know who's going to be monitoring that. And then also send it to, if you can't find a general email address, then sending it to one of the faculty members, whoever's listed on the website. And it usually will be pretty clear on that. So that's always a good reference point for me, is go back to the website and see what they recommend.
Yeah, and I've looked through quite a few websites at this point, and holy moly, it just varies. Some of it you really have to dig. Some of it you can't find anyone. Some of it, like you said, all you get is a general school inbox where you send, like, if you want more information, send us, or you fill out your information, then they email you like a school brochure, and but it's not like you actually get to contact anyone. So it can feel frustrating as a student when you're like, I just have this really particular question, but I can't get a hold of anyone to ask it. And so again, that's why the open houses are key. And then networking is also key, and utilizing resources like CRNA School Prep Academy, because sometimes it's just, you have that little question, but it might not be a huge deal, but it still will make you feel better having it answered. But you're not always going to have an easy time getting in contact with someone from your school.
Yeah, and the other avenue when you look at electronic communication too is, if you have developed a relationship or contact with a program faculty member, that's okay too. Kind of the scenario I was giving is, if you are or really have no relationship with any program faculty member, you've not met any of them, it's program XYZ in Midwest, United States of America, and you don't know anything, you're just applying there. That's kind of how you do it. But if you develop a relationship, or if you've had contact with one of the program faculty members, it doesn't hurt to reach out to them and say, hey, I have a question. It's regarding GRE scores. Who would be the appropriate person within the program to contact? I'm not saying dump everything on them immediately
mm.
with your questions, but ask who's the pro, and they may say, hey, I can answer that, send it back to me. Or they may say, you know what, I'm copying Jenny on this. She's the one who's going to be your best resource.
I love that. That's actually a really good point, to let them choose who answers the email versus them just dumping everything on automatically. And you guys can get these connections by trying to get shadowing experiences. I know a lot of students, a lot of faculty members work in the local hospitals around the university. So it's a great way, if you do get a shadowing experience, maybe ask, like, is there a program faculty from X, Y, and Z university that works here that I can maybe set up my shadow day with? That's gold, in my opinion, if you can get a day with someone from the school, because now you know them face to face, they know you. It'll be less pressure on the interview because you'll recognize them and say, hey, and then keep in contact with them too. Um, so something to keep in mind.
Even let's expand on that a little bit, Jenny, is you bring up a great point about faculty members working within the hospital system, because they do. And it may be, again, an assistant director, a faculty member, or a program director. So if you're shadowing, even if you don't get to shadow a faculty member, talk with your CRNAs that you're shadowing. Let them know, hey, you're interested. And if you know the faculty member, could you please introduce me to them? I would love to just, meet them face to face today. And again, that's not going to be a 45-minute conversation you're going to have with them. It may be just passing in the hall, or it may be that during a break, the CRNA takes you in there and says, hey, I want to introduce you to Jenny. Richard, this is Jenny. Jenny's looking at applying to anesthesia school. She's here shadowing today, and I just wanted you to meet her while she was here. And that's all it takes. And now I may remember Jenny the next time that she comes around. And a lot of these CRNAs really want applicants to get into school. That is their goal too. They're so excited about it. They really want to get in school. So they won't hesitate either to find the faculty member and say, let me introduce you real quick to this individual.
Oh yeah, 100%. You guys are going to find when you're starting to get into this community that we really look out for one another. We're really a very close, tight-knit network of CRNAs. I mean, we're small, and so we all try to help each other out. I've heard that over and over again from students who start researching this profession that, wow, it's going to be very different probably from your experience in just nursing in general, in my opinion. I think CRNAs are very much so like, let's build each other up and help each other as much as possible, because guess what? They were in your shoes once and they remember what it was like, and they needed that help as well. So they're happy to give it back someday. So I guess the next question is, when reaching out to a program electronically, which we should probably touch on that too, how should they kind of approach what information they include?
So electronic communication is always tricky.
Yeah.
It is always tricky. I always tell people, especially with my students that we mentor with individuals that are applying, always really, when you go to set up your electronic communication with a program or with a faculty member, I think there's several things you need to take into consideration. One, make sure you're keeping a professional approach the entire time. I think there's nothing wrong with Mr., Miss, Doctor, to whom it may concern, whatever it is. I think that really bodes better than calling a faculty member by their first name as some of your initial contact with them. Now, the reason I say that is some may not mind it, but some do. And therefore, you don't want to leave that up to them to determine whether they like it or not. You want to take the high road, in my opinion, and always address them with a professional title, because that sets you up for success down the road in a professional setting. So I always say, one, make sure you're addressing it in a professional manner. Now, how do you do that? Well, you may not know their degree off the top of your head, but again, this is taking that time to research before you just start firing emails off, trying to find information. I think we live in a society today where, and I can be a part of this myself, where I need that instant gratification, that instant answer. And if it's on my mind, I got to send it out before I forget, because I got 25 other things on my mind that I got to take care of. And so we fire an email or an electronic communication off real quick, and we don't think about the details of it per se. All right. So I think find that, do your research, dive into the website, find out what their title is if they have one. And if not, just, it's a Mr. or a Mrs., just in a last name, to be professional about the initial communication that you're having with them. That's how you want to start off with it. The other part that I look at is tone. You have to be careful, because electronic communications are so tricky with the tone that can be interpreted from them. It was something that we were talking a little bit about before we joined on here with the podcast, Jenny, is our faculty members throughout the nation are either teaching, in meetings, or in the operating rooms just about every single day. And we don't know how that handles. You can have a bad day in the operating room, things didn't go well. Maybe it was a touchy situation with a patient, maybe a touchy situation with a surgeon or a care team member, who knows? Maybe the meetings that you were at, you didn't get the answer you wanted, and you're kind of a little bit edgy or a little bit distraught from that. And so you can interpret somebody's communication in a different manner than what they meant. So that's why I always tell people to kind of be very careful about the tone they use or the words they use, so that it doesn't have an opportunity to come off in a specific tone. And that means that what you have to do possibly is write the email, sit on it for a little bit, and then go back and read it again to make sure that your initial communications was what you intended it to be. I always give the advice too, that any communication you send to any email address, whether it's generic email address, whether it is the faculty member's email address, could be forwarded up to the president of the university. I always say, if you take that approach, then you look at it completely different. I always tell the students, anything you send to me, just assume that it's going to get forwarded to the president of the university or the president of our hospital. Because if it's a question that needs to be asked, I'm forwarding it straight over. I'm not cleaning it up for you
Mm-hmm.
and having to, you know, correct the tone possibly on it. If you do it in that manner, if you think about it in that manner when you write it, then I think we take a different approach. I know I do. When I'm sending something to possibly you, I have a whole different approach than when I'm sending it to one of my colleagues around here where I work, that I think, okay, this has enough of a question to it that may get forwarded along
Mm-hmm.
down the line. So I always say, you know, that's a good way to think about how we move with our electronic or email communications. And I always think email communications, you need to be in the basics. A lot of people want to explain their entire story over email. I don't think that's the place, honestly, to explain it. I think you want to give some high level information. If they ask you some things, I don't think you have to get into a thesis on why you didn't do well your first semester of undergrad school or why you didn't go into the ICUs initially. I don't think you have to get in all that because, again, tone. Conversations, we can interpret the tone, but I think when you look at email communications, then that's where people share a whole lot of information and it can possibly be misinterpreted in a manner of what you originally sent it at. So I think that's really you share some information, you share the basics, and you share the required and needed information, and then just say, hey, if you need further information because it is detailed, I'd be glad to set up a time to speak with you if that's okay. And then that way you can get the right information, right tone across, and it doesn't come across in manners like excuses, whiny, the things that, like you said, people are wanting to make sure that they avoid
Mm-hmm.
when they are communicating with faculty.
Yeah. And there's something to be said too. It's kind of like you said earlier, kind of putting it back on them to whether it's okay for them to share all this information, meaning this is a basic background of me. But I would love if you have time, we can maybe go into more details, let me know. And that way it gives them the choice to say, yes, let me have it. I'll take your whole story, or let's set up a phone call so we can discuss it. Or them saying, you know, actually, I don't, because they may not, like you said, it may not be the right person to address that with, or maybe they just simply don't have the time. And so when you're putting that on them from the get-go, it could turn them off. Like they're expected to evaluate your whole life scenario right then and there on the spot versus kind of starting a relationship with them and then build up to that kind of a big, massive question. So
Yeah,
I
and
agree.
Jenny, you know as well as I do, I mean, we as nurse anesthetists are trained on the clinical side. Find a problem, address it, fix it now, and move on.
Right.
That is how we are trained
Mm-hmm.
clinically, right? And we have a lot of clinicians who go into academics.
Mm-hmm.
And so, of course, what are they usually trained on is, hey, I see the issue, let's fix it and let's move on. And so if you send them a lot of information, they may try to fix it or give you that real quick
Mm-hmm.
so that they can move on to the next task. And you may not get the full answer of what you need when it's in the electronic format like that, and
Mm-hmm.
you explain everything. However, again, like you just mentioned, if you forward it to the right person, you know, you ask them and let them forward it to the right person, that person will spend time on it.
Mm-hmm.
Or if you set up a phone conversation, they'll make sure they set it up where they have time to actually talk to you, get to know you, communicate, and get you all the right information versus part of what they are just trying to move on to.
Right. I think that's a great. And then I love how you started this off with be professional, because you guys, I made that mistake. It's so easy to be super casual in email, especially when you're used to emailing your friends, or like, I know, like for my mistake was I was in like a wedding planning mode, and not that I should have been more professional with my wedding planning emails, but you get sent out so many emails when you're in wedding planning mode. And so I just, for whatever reason, I didn't plan, and I addressed the program director very informally and actually made him very upset. And he actually came back at me and telling me how rude generation, how the millennials were super rude, and generation X, Y, and Z, yada, yada. And he actually asked me to write a paper on the millennials and generation X, Y, and Z. So I was like, oh my gosh, I thought I totally messed up my chances at ever getting into that program. Of course, I apologized as much as I could. And I wrote this probably 5-page paper on researching on millennials. And he actually was very impressed with that paper. And so then we kind of, got off on the right foot. We kind of laughed about it. We were on it, ended up being on good terms. And then I got married. And so my last name changed. And so I still to this day. In fact, I should ask him, because we're on speaking terms. We chatted. In fact, we just chatted last week. He's now retired, but I was never sure if he would remember who I was in the interview, since I had a different last name at the time. But yes, be formal. It never hurts to be formal. It can hurt you to be informal. So definitely keep
Jenny,
that in mind.
I'll be honest with you. I don't recommend that take for everybody. It sounds like it worked out well for you, but I wouldn't recommend that path for everybody.
No, I mean, trust me. Trust me. I thought, like I said, it was like earth shattering when I was like, what did I do? You know what I mean? And yeah, it worked out well, but it definitely could not have. Yeah.
So you brought up a great point with that too, that I would love to touch on is one thing you have to think of when you're communicating with the program faculty members is you have to think about the generation you're communicating with. So one thing that I always kind of encourage people to think about is the program faculty members are truly the ones in charge. They're the ones that are going to decide who gets into programs. They're the ones that are going to decide your education and potentially your future. Which is life changing when you think about going from a nursing degree to a nurse anesthetist profession. And so you have to communicate with them and play on their field. They're not going to come play on your field, to be honest with you, because they're having anywhere to 5-6 times even more applicants than the positions they have available in their program. So they're going to be able to choose from a lot of different people. And therefore, if you're not communicating with them in the manner that they want you to, or that they expect, or in an unprofessional manner, they're going to pass you up to go to somebody else because they have so many. And so we have to think about that, just as much, and I'll say this, just as much as us faculty members have to think about the education we're providing and the teaching methods we're using and how the new generations like to learn, just as much as we have to think about that while we're delivering our content to them, right? I think applicants need to think that much about how they communicate initially with faculty members who are in a different generation, who have a different expectations for communication. So I think that's where you become successful, is when you start thinking on those manners. There's a lot of emotional intelligence that's associated with that, that you have to kind of think about.
Yes, 100%. And like you said, it's everyone's generations are very different. So you have to think about that. That's a great point. So do you think it's okay if students were to actually call the program offices themselves and ask to speak to someone?
Yeah, I think it is. I think, first of all, you go back and look at the email communications. Maybe you haven't gotten a response from email communications. Maybe the response you got did seem like it was from somebody generic at the university instead of from somebody within the program itself. Maybe the question that you raised, you got a response back and it just was not quite the detail you were hoping for, or didn't quite answer the question. So it seemed like the question might have been confusing to the program when you were asking it. So I think it definitely is. Now, I don't think you call and ask, say, I want to speak to the program director, I want to speak to this individual. I think you do it just like we were talking about with the emails. You call them, hey, this is Richard. I am interested in your program. I am from your area. And I was just wondering if there's somebody I could talk with about the requirements, or somebody I could talk about stroke. You kind of briefly mention what you want to talk about, and therefore you can get forwarded to the right person, or maybe there's somebody that's available right then. And that's the other part I was going to mention, is when you call, be ready to talk to somebody. Don't call with the anticipation that you're going to get put on hold and that you never know. It may be that everybody's out of the office except the program director, and that's the one that answers the phone, and now you're on the spot. So I always say, when you call, be prepared, be ready. We're actually going to go into some detail on that, I believe, in a few questions. But yes, I think it's okay to call the program offices with the anticipation that, again, they may forward you to somebody else. They may put you on hold. They may ask you to call back or set something up, but also with the anticipation that somebody may be there right then to talk to.
Yeah, great point. And so that being said, if you do get a chance to speak with a program faculty member, like what kind of information should they have ready to talk about at that time?
So the first thing you should have ready is all the requirements. You should have viewed the website. You should have known what's going on with their program, and you should know what the requirements for the program are. Because if you want to talk about your application and if you're going to be a competitive applicant, right, they're going to ask you, okay, what is your transcripts look like? What is your GPA? What is your science GPA? What is your last 60 hours possibly, if that's what they like to look at? They're going to ask you, what did you make in certain courses? What is your GRE score? What is your clinical experience? What is your leadership? What certifications do you have? They may ask you all of that, right? They may ask you what drew you into the field of nurse anesthesia, what drew you towards this field. So I think you need to have almost an interview mentality already set up. Now, I'm not saying that it is an interview per se, or that they're going to ask you interview questions. It kind of becomes an informal interview at a certain point of what they're asking you. And if you call them and they ask you, what is your GRE score? I can't remember. Or it was a 305. Well, what did you get in verbal and quantitative? I can't remember what the breakdown was. I just remember it was a 3. You've now turned into wasting some of their time, which is not going to be looked upon highly by a lot of faculty members. So I say come with and have the information ready, right? Have the GRE scores, have your transcripts, know what your overall GPA is on a roundabout. And you may not have to know it's a 3.29, but if you can say, hey, it's around a 3.2, 3.3, that gives them an idea of versus it's a 3.7, 3.8. My sciences are around a 3.4 versus a 4.0. So you need to have a good idea of where they sit versus saying, I'm not sure, I'll have to get back in touch with you on that. Have that information ready overall. So I think that's one of the things to have ready for your conversation. I think second is view the website, and a lot of them have their faculty members listed and a little bio about each of them. Now, I don't think you have to memorize their bios, but I think you need to know what the role of the faculty members are. So in case they say, hey, I'm going to forward you over to John Smith, and John Smith's the assistant program director, you know that. And you don't have to say, now, what was your role again? Because you should have already done some research behind that to know that you're talking to the assistant program director, not to the admin assistant, right? And sometimes the admin assistant knows more than the assistant program director. I understand that. But you want to know who each person is. It may be that you've got it written down on a piece of paper sitting right there in front of you. Of course, they're not going to be able to see it since it's a phone conversation. So that when they say the name, you can look down real quickly and go, okay, John Smith, assistant program director, I know who I'm talking to. All right. So I think that's kind of key information to have available when you start to have the phone conversations with them, is anything that you can anticipate they may want to know about you.
That's great. And then if they actually get a chance to actually meet with a program faculty, I even think there was a student recently on the Facebook community. And for those of you who don't know, we do have a Facebook community. It's called ICU Dreaming About Anesthesia. But she actually had an opportunity to go to like an informal lunch with the program director and some friends. But I guess, can we speak for maybe a formal meeting in the office versus maybe if it was a casual meeting like that, what you should carry with you?
Ooh, casual meeting would scare me. Oh man, that's just set up. But no, I mean, I really think casual or formal, I think you got to kind of come with the same information. I think you address it. To me, honestly, you address it the same way. I don't think when you are preparing for anesthesia school and meeting with a faculty member who is potentially going to be a part of making a decision of whether you get into school or not, I don't think you can be too formal, to be honest with you. I think you can be too casual, which may set you up. But I don't think, because I think if you're looking at a business casual type environment, even if you go business with it, they're going to look at you in a positive manner overall. I think if you go casual with it, you take the risk of being perceived as not caring as much or not taking it as serious as they would like you to. So I think in either environment, as you look at dress code on that, I think you always go with a business casual. At least if you're showing up to the office or showing up to a lunch overall. I think when you look at what do you bring to it, I think you bring your transcripts, a copy of your transcripts in case they say, hey, can I just take a quick look at those? Let me just take a quick look and I can give you some advice on some of the courses and tell you what it means. Bring your GRE scores with you so that they can take a look at those. Bring your resume or your CV. It never hurts to bring a copy of that in case they want to take a look at it and dive in to it. Now, they're not going to do a formal review necessarily like they would for your application itself, but they may give you some good tips. You know, they may look at your resume and say, hey, this looks great, but this is a lot of busyness right here. I see what it says, but before you submit the application, I would recommend cleaning this up a little bit or including some more in here or rearranging it a little bit here, or we don't even need this right here. They may give you some informal feedback on it as long as you have it with you, but if you don't have it, they can't do that. So I don't, and what's the worst thing that could happen? They say they don't want to look at it and then you just have a piece of paper with you, right? But then if they ask you to look at it and you don't have it, then you look unprepared. So I always say, take the transcripts, take the GRE, take, you know, I don't think you have to have a personal statement with you at the time, but definitely, you know, the three major ones that most people look at is the GRE if they require it, transcripts definitely, and a CV definitely.
Okay. And at least maybe be able to speak to your essay in a sense that you come prepared knowing what you would say to why CRNA or whatever their prompt may be able to speak to it a little bit.
Absolutely. If you know their prompt, you are set because then you'll be able to have a good conversation about that. So that is a very good point. If you know the prompt for the essay, focus on that a little bit and bring that up in your conversation.
Yeah, I think that'd be impressive too. So yeah, those are all really good points. For those of you guys, this is going to be going on YouTube. It sounds like a herd of elephants are above us right now because our kids are home. So I do apologize about that. There's like a stampede up there. So I guess let's just say too, what questions should, you know, they ask program faculties members either when talking to them over the phone or in person, and maybe what should they not say?
So again, research the website. We're not going to say that enough times on this podcast today, but you definitely have to research that website. You don't want to ask them basic information that can definitely be found on their website, because then they're going to wonder, did you do any research? Do you know anything about our program? Or are you just calling us out the clear blue because you saw our name pop up on a Google search somewhere? So definitely look at the website. I can tell you, you know, if you're like, hey, what's the minimum GPA that you have to have? What is the minimum GRE score? Most of that, minimum number of years of experience. Do you accept ER or do you accept PACU experience? Most of that is found on the website overall. And so if you're asking questions that are easily found on their website, again, it's a possibility of creating a negative impact on the rest of the conversation, or negative vibe that may play over into your application overall. So I always say, make sure you look at the website, make sure you have viewed it. Again, any basic information that is on there, especially if it's cut and dry, then that is where I would stay away from asking those type of questions. The only times I would ask questions about some of that stuff is if they said it's considered on an individual basis. So if they said PACU or ER experience considered on an individual basis, then that's okay. But if they say we don't consider ER or we don't consider PACU, then don't ask if they do, because it's already on the website. So that's why you want to review the website. So again, don't ask the basic requirements. Don't ask stuff that you should have researched before. If it's found on their website, ask for clarification, but don't try to convince them that they should accept it or that they should take a look at it. Because what we'll see sometimes is we'll see people say, hey, I've got ER experience, but it's a level 1 trauma center. We get all of this and we get all of that, and programs are like, well, I don't accept ER experience. You're not going to convince me to. it's in our program. We don't accept that.
Mhm.
So I think that's where people and applicants possibly get into some awkward conversations, and really, to me, kind of takes the train off the rails. Basically, is when they start trying to say, "But I have this. Why won't you accept this?"
Mm.
Again, they've got 5, 6, 7, 8 times the number of applicants that they need to fill the spots.
Mhm.
They can move on to what they are getting that meets their requirements. So I'd say ask about specific structures of the program. Sometimes that's not completely listed um, on a website. Now, some programs are still listing themselves as integrated while they're transitioning to the doctoral degree. So ask them, what does integrated mean to you? How quickly does that mean your students get into the clinical setting? What courses are they taking online and not taking online? What are some of the distance ed type courses that you're providing? What's in your research? What are you focused on in your research? Some of those things are not clearly found in the websites because it varies from program to program, of course, and it varies within the program from year to year at times. So I think that's some questions to really focus on. Ask about students currently in the program and what they like about the program and what's going on with maybe some of the research they're doing overall. I say this, and this may be a difficult one to ask at times, but ask them, depending on where the offices are, if you were meeting in person with them, and depending on where the program offices are, if it's near the classroom or near the simulation center, ask them, hey, can I go take a look at the classroom? Can I take a look at the sim center? Will you take me on a tour of that? Because if they have time and they do it, that's going to be a meaningful impact to them because they will remember, oh, yeah,
Mm.
Jane Doe asked me to take them on a tour while they were here. But not only that, when you do get to write your personal essay for the application, and when you do get to an interview, there's going to be great things to bring up that you've already seen within their program.
Mhm.
So I think that's some key things to ask for. I say don't get too detailed when trying to explain things. Um, a lot of people want to say, well, here's why I want to go to your program, and here's why I would be a great candidate for it. So they're already trying to sell themselves on initial conversations, and they get real detailed about that sometimes. I'd say stay away from all the details. Again, you want to give them a consensus of why they want to consider you as an applicant. And it's because you met the criteria of what they're looking for to get within the program. You're not trying to gain admission through that conversation, because it doesn't matter how much I sell myself to you right now, Jenny.
Mhm.
I've got to sell myself to the committee when the interview comes across, because if I sell myself to you now, but I can't sell myself to the whole committee, the committee may override that one conversation from a year ago of where you sold yourself. So I think that's kind of a focus, I would say, overall. And again, I mentioned this. The biggest mistake I think I see people make overall, or that I've actually heard from other faculty members that I speak with from across the nation, is people trying to explain why they didn't do well in their first year of the nursing program, why they didn't do well in the GRE, why they may not be in the ICU now, or why they didn't start off in the ICU. And they start fumbling over it or trying to explain it so much. It's almost like they're trying to justify where they're at and what they're doing to convince the faculty to accept it.
Mhm.
And that's not what you want to do in initial conversations or in early conversations. That's more of trying to get to the interview and explain that in the interview.
Yeah, those are all really excellent points. And I love how you pointed out how, you have to say it's the whole committee who makes the decision, not just one person. I've routinely had students who really try really hard to network with say the program director. And then that program director leaves and they feel defeated. They spent years trying to get to know the program director, only have them leave and have to start all over again. If you take that approach, you really could be, you got to keep in mind, again, this interview process is going to be a whole committee worth of people making a decision, not just one person. Um,
Yeah, and that's a very good point, because you want to base, and I think you can, if you approach it this way, you might do well. You want to base your application and your acceptance off who you are and what you have, right? Networking doesn't hurt. Don't get me
mhm,
wrong. I think networking is really important and can be beneficial. But if you're basing getting into school off the networking you're doing instead of the qualifications you bring, then you are set up for failure, because you're right. What if that program director leaves? What if that assistant program director leaves? What if somebody comes in with a whole different mindset, right? You
Mhm.
know, what if you and I have not seen eye to eye in a clinical setting, and now I am on the committee, and I
Exactly.
wasn't years ago, right? So you want to make sure you make yourself the strongest. Include networking in there to help, but make sure you're the strongest applicant you can be. And again, network with more people. If you get to talk to a director, great. If it's the assistant director or a faculty member, great. Just get into a conversation.
Mhm. And I guess let's kind of wrap this up with, I guess, how should they plan on following up? And if so, maybe how frequently should they do that?
I think absolutely. I don't think you have to follow up immediately after you walk out the office or you hang the phone up.
Mhm.
But I do think give it 24 hours and follow up with an email or a I'd say follow up with an email. We all live in a society anymore where it used to be a handwritten card was what they wanted to see, but I think there's um, a lot to say about email communication now that is really taking the place of having to do a handwritten card. Now, nothing wrong with that. If you send one, that's great, and people will accept it, and it will stand out. But I say definitely follow up via email. You know, thank them for their time. They obviously had to take some time out, whether it was a phone call. You don't know what they were in the middle of. They could have been in the middle of redesigning an entire course and took time out to talk to you on the phone. They could have been in the middle of who knows what kind of meeting coming up, and they took time to meet with you before that. So always, I say always follow up with some kind of communication and thank them for the time, thank them for the information they shared with you. They could either help you be a stronger applicant or get to know more about the program. I think those are kind of key phrases
Mm.
that are great to use within these. And if they ask you for any information and you didn't have it, maybe you didn't have your GRE score breakdown, maybe you didn't have what year you did something or what certification or how well you did on the CCRN that they may have asked about. Make sure that when you communicate back with them, you send that information back to them. They like to see that follow up that not only did I ask you and you didn't know, but you went and researched it, found it out for me, and sent it back to me. So I think, you know, usually within about 24 to 48 hours, definitely communicate back with them. Thank them for their time. Thank them for what they shared with you. And again, share any information that you may not have had that they asked for.
That's all excellent points. And to that point, thank you, Richard, for your time taking today to do this podcast episode with us. Holy cow, it's packed full of so much great golden nuggets. You guys definitely want to download this and save this episode. Thank you for all you do for CRNA School Prep Academy. Again, you guys, I'm going to list in the show notes below CRNA School Prep Academy. We are also, Richard and it was actually, I would say, Richard, you have played a very integral part of spurring the motions of this conference. But we are doing a conference in South Carolina, Greenville, South Carolina. Richard is going to be speaking and sharing more of this valuable information with you guys. He's going to do a deep dive into the application process for you. So I really hope you guys consider attending this conference. Again, Greenville, South Carolina, October 23rd and 24th. We are so excited to meet you. And actually, something fun that Richard and I have decided to do is that 10 people who sign up before the end of August, August 31st of 2021, are going to have a chance to win a lunch with Richard and I. And we're going to be buying you lunch. We're going to sit around. We're going to talk all things anesthesia school, application requirements, or just get to know each other and just have fun. So I know I can speak for you in the fact that we're both excited to do that and meet you guys. So thank you, Richard. And, you know, like I said, enjoy the rest of your day, your busy day, and we'll definitely bring you back on the show down the road.
Thank you, Jenny. I enjoyed it. Thanks for what you're doing for all the ones that are trying to get into anesthesia school. The community's been great. I've been excited to be a part of it. I am definitely excited about the conference coming up here and all the great speakers, yourself, Matt, Peter, Natalie, all that are going to be there sharing everything from, hey guys, she didn't mention this, but we're sharing everything from how to pay for school, stress relief, stress management during school, how to apply and get into school, mock interview type stuff. So it's going to be jam packed with things from not only of how to get into, but how to survive through anesthesia school.
Yes, it's going to be awesome. I'm so excited for it. So, all right. Well, thank you so much. And you guys, thank you for tuning in. As always, go ahead and leave a review in the comments below. I love to hear your feedback. All right. Take care. Bye-bye.